Okay, let's jump right into this explainer with a bit of a workplace detective story. We're looking at a fascinating 2025 study from the International Journal of Applied Management and Technology, and we're trying to crack a code literally every company wants to solve. What actually gets employees to care about their work? We're going to dig into the psychology, the hard numbers, and a pretty massive surprise about leadership that completely flips the script. To understand why this matters so much, we have to start fast and hit the staggering stakes involved here. Organizations worldwide are losing an estimated $8.9 trillion every single year due to disengaged employees. 8.9 trillion. To put that massive number into perspective, that equates to 9% of the entire global GDP. Literally, 9% of the world's economic output is just completely lost to people mentally checking out of their jobs. And if we narrow our focus specifically to the high-pressure U.S. workplace, the picture is just as intense. An eye-opening 70% of employees in the U.S. are completely disengaged from their daily jobs. Think about that for a second. That means for every 10 people sitting in an office or on a Zoom call, 7 of them are simply going through the motions. So that brings us to the million-dollar, or I guess trillion-dollar question. How do we fix the engagement crisis? Our investigation today takes us directly into the intense, high-stakes environment of the U.S. private financial sector. We're talking about an industry managing trillions of dollars, where frontline employees are under immense pressure, and where retaining your absolute top talent is really the only way to maintain a competitive advantage. To find a solution, the researchers tested a very specific framework. It's called servant leadership. Now, this isn't your traditional top-down authoritative management style. Instead of the boss sitting at the top of a pyramid just shouting orders downward, the servant leader's primary goal is actually serving and developing their followers. The idea is that by nurturing the employee's needs first, the organizational goals are naturally met as a byproduct. There's this fantastic quote from the foundational literature of this theory that just puts it perfectly. Before learning how to lead, leaders need to know how to serve. Otherwise, they may use their power to manipulate followers. It's a powerful reminder, right? Genuine service and self-sacrifice are the actual engines driving this entire leadership style. But why does this work psychologically? Well, it comes down to Blau's social exchange theory. Basically, it maps out a give-and-take transaction. When a leader gives by showing genuine care, listening to their team, and building trust, the employee naturally reciprocates. And what exactly do they give back? They give the 3 pillars of work engagement. Vigor, meaning they work with intense energy. Dedication, meaning they find the work deeply meaningful. And absorption, where they are completely and happily immersed in the task at hand. So, the researchers surveyed 190 private financial sector employees in the U.S. to see which specific traits of a servant leader actually triggered this psychological exchange. They lined up 3 primary suspects to test. We have humility, active listening, and trust building. Now, we have 3 universally praised leadership traits here. But in the ruthless, data-driven world of private finance, which trait actually moves the needle? Which one statistically predicts whether an employee will put their head down and passionately do the work? I want you to take a second and guess which one of these actually came out on top. Okay, here is the bombshell reveal from the regression analysis. Active listening completely dominates. It is the undisputed statistical champion of employee engagement. Trust building also helps significantly, but the massive twist that really surprised me, humility on its own was completely statistically insignificant. No way, right? Before we unpack that twist, let's just appreciate the sheer power of this equation. The researchers found that these traits combined account for over 52.8% of the variance in employee engagement. Think about how wild that is. Over half the mystery of why an employee cares about their job is solved just by getting these specific leadership behaviors right. But we really have to talk about the wait, really? Moment of this study from the International Journal of Applied Management and Technology. How on earth could humility, which is a core fundamental tenet of servant leadership, fail to predict engagement on its own? It actually contradicts several previous studies. Well, the researchers uncovered a brilliant sequential logic to explain this. Humility didn't fail, it's just not the end product. Humility is step 1. It's the psychological requirement. You have to be humble to put your ego aside and focus on someone else. That humility is what allows you to execute step 2, active listening. And when you actively listen, that action generates step 3, trust building. You can't just be humble in a corner. You have to weaponize that humility through the act of listening. So, what does the undisputed king, active listening, actually look like? The study uses the Hurrier model developed by Brownell. And listen, it's not just nodding your head and saying, uh-huh. It's a rigorous 6-component process. It starts with hearing the words without distraction, then understanding the message. Next is remembering it so you can actually paraphrase it later. After that, interpreting the subtle nonverbal cues. Then evaluating the message non-judgmentally with real emotional intelligence. And finally, responding thoughtfully rather than just reacting on impulse. So we have our statistical winner. But how do we take this highly effective listening model out of the academic journals and put it straight into the boardroom? How do we turn all this data into practical, immediate action? For that, we look at concrete tools from the Best Practice Institute. To operationalize active listening, HR professionals and managers can implement structural changes right now. This includes conducting stay interviews to find out exactly why people stick around before they ever decide to leave. It means establishing regular, dedicated listening hours, utilizing quick pulse surveys to accurately read the room, and hosting open leadership forums where genuine, unfiltered dialogue actually happens. But here is the absolutely crucial point. Visibility matters. Organizations only see a real return on this investment when senior leaders directly interact with employees. Data dashboards are simply not enough. The academic data prove that active listening drives engagement, but the practical application proves that employees need to visibly see their leaders absorbing that feedback and actually making changes. It cannot just be an HR function. It must be a visible leadership priority. Which brings us to a final provocative thought. We know the cost of disengagement is massive. We know that active listening is the statistical key to unlocking human capital. So look at your own organization and ask yourself, are your leaders really listening? Or are they just collecting feedback? Because as the data clearly shows, knowing the difference is worth trillions.